I need you to listen carefully. That thing you keep doing, smiling when you don't mean it, agreeing when you don't agree, laughing at jokes that aren't funny, saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. You think it makes you a good person. It doesn't. It makes you tired. I'm 78 years old, and I spent 40 years of my life trying to be liked. 40 years. That's a long time to shape your personality around other people's comfort. I thought if everyone approved of me, if nobody was upset with me, if I avoided conflict, if I stayed agreeable, then I would finally feel safe, respected, valued. But let me tell you something nobody told me when I was young. Being liked is not the same thing as being at peace. And if you build your life around approval, you will wake up one day and realize you don't even know who you are. Sit with me for a few minutes, because what took me 4 decades to understand might save you half your life. You see, I wasn't born this way. No one is. When I was a boy, I noticed something very early. People liked the quiet ones, the helpful ones, the easy ones. The child who didn't argue, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who made things simple for everyone else. So I became that child. Teachers liked me, neighbors liked me, relatives called me such a good boy. And every time someone approved of me, it felt like a small reward, a small hit of relief, because deep down I was afraid of something. Afraid of disappointing people, afraid of being rejected, afraid of being too much. So I learned to shrink. Not obviously, not dramatically, just slowly, politely, strategically. By the time I was 30, I could read a room in seconds. I knew exactly who to be. And that was the problem. I was everyone's version of me, except my own. By the time I reached my 40s, people described me the same way everywhere I went. Reliable, easy to work with, such a nice man. And I wore those words like medals. But here's what nobody saw. Every time I said yes when I meant no, something inside me tightened. Every time I stayed quiet to avoid tension, a small piece of honesty disappeared. It wasn't dramatic. There were no explosions, no broken plates, no shouting, just quiet self-betrayal, over and over again. At work, I took on extra responsibilities I didn't want. With friends, I agreed with opinions I didn't share. In relationships, I swallowed frustrations because I didn't want to seem difficult. I told myself I was being mature, but maturity is not silence. And kindness is not self-erasure. It took me decades to understand that. When you constantly shape yourself to fit other people's expectations, you slowly disappear. And the frightening part? Most people will applaud you while you fade.
Let me tell you where this becomes dangerous. When you spend years trying to be liked, you stop asking yourself a very important question. What do I actually want? I remember being offered a promotion at 45. More money, more responsibility, longer hours. Everyone said, you'd be perfect for it. So I accepted. Not because I wanted it, but because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. That was the pattern. I didn't choose based on desire. I chose based on approval. And here's the quiet tragedy of that. When your decisions are built on other people's expectations, you end up living a life that feels slightly off. Not terrible, not dramatic, just misaligned. Like wearing someone else's coat. It fits well enough, but it was never made for you. And the longer you wear it, the harder it becomes to take it off. Now, here's the part nobody warns you about. When you were always agreeable, people start to expect it. They don't mean to take advantage of you, but they do, because you trained them to. You trained them that your boundaries are flexible, that your time is available, that your needs can wait. And at first you feel useful, important, needed. But usefulness is not the same as love, and being needed is not the same as being respected. I remember one evening, I was 52, sitting at the kitchen table after everyone had gone to bed, exhausted. Not from work, from pretending, from constantly adjusting, from monitoring my tone, my words, my reactions. I realized something uncomfortable that night. Nobody actually knew me. They knew the pleasant version, the safe version, the non-threatening version, but not me. And the loneliest feeling in the world is being surrounded by people who like you, but don't know you. It hit me slowly, not in some dramatic breakdown, not in a shouting match, not in a crisis, just a quiet, unsettling awareness. I didn't know what I liked anymore. If you had asked me then, what do you enjoy, I would have given you practical answers. Work, stability, being dependable. But those weren't joys, they were roles. Somewhere along the way, I confused being accepted with being authentic, and the two are not the same. When you're constantly adjusting yourself to keep everyone comfortable, you stop exploring your own edges, your own opinions, your own desires. I remember being asked once, "What do you want?" And I froze. Not because I was indecisive, but because I genuinely didn't know. 40 years of shaping myself around others, and I had lost the shape of me.
There was a moment I'll never forget. I was 61. A colleague of mine, younger, confident, unapologetic, said something in a meeting that I completely disagreed with. Everyone looked at me. They knew I disagreed. I felt it in my chest, that tightness, that familiar fear. If I speak up, someone might not like me. So I smiled, and I said, "That makes sense." It didn't, and in that moment, something inside me quietly disappeared. You see, when you betray yourself often enough, you stop trusting yourself. You stop knowing what you really think. You become adjustable, moldable, safe, and invisible. People say they like you, but they don't know you because you never showed them. I wasn't respected. I was tolerated. There's a difference, and it took me 40 years to see it. I used to believe that being agreeable made me mature, that staying calm, staying pleasant, staying easy to deal with, that was strength. But it wasn't strength. It was fear dressed up as politeness. I was afraid that if I showed anger, I'd be rejected. If I showed ambition, I'd be judged. If I showed vulnerability, I'd be seen as weak. So I edited myself, sentence by sentence, reaction by reaction, until the version of me that the world saw was carefully filtered, acceptable, non-threatening, easy. And do you know what happens when you live like that? You attract people who only love the edited version, not the real one. And when they eventually leave, because some of them will, you don't just lose them, you lose the performance. And suddenly you're standing there thinking, if I'm not who they liked, then who am I? That question is terrifying at 30. It's devastating at 70. Let me tell you what finally changed things for me. It wasn't some dramatic argument. It wasn't losing everyone. It was something much quieter than that. I was 72. An old friend of mine, someone I'd known for decades, looked at me during coffee and said, "You're a good man, but I've never really known you." He didn't say it to hurt me. He said it casually, almost kindly. But it hit me harder than any insult ever could. Because he was right. I had spent my whole life being pleasant, and almost none of it being honest. Not brutally honest, just real. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen. No television, no phone,
just silence. And I asked myself a question I had avoided for 40 years. What do I actually think? Not what sounds right, not what keeps the peace, not what makes people comfortable. What do I believe? It was the first time in my life I answered without adjusting the volume for someone else. And it felt terrifying, but also freeing. The first time I disagreed openly, my hands were shaking. 72 years old, and my hands were shaking. It wasn't even a big thing, a small family dinner, a conversation about something political. Normally, I would nod, smile, change the subject. But this time, I said, I don't see it that way. Silence. Forks paused mid-air. Someone frowned. And for a few seconds, I felt that old panic rise up. They might not like this. They might not like me. But then something unexpected happened. The world didn't end. No one stood up and left. No one disowned me. They disagreed. We talked. It was uncomfortable, but it was real. And when I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Solid, like my spine had finally remembered what it was built for. That's when I understood something important. Being liked feels warm, but being honest feels strong. And strength lasts longer than approval ever will. I am 78 years old now, and if I could go back and speak to my younger self, I would tell him something very simple. Stop trying to be liked by everyone. It is a trap, not a loud trap, a quiet one, the kind that slowly turns you into someone you don't recognize. Some people will like you, some won't, and it has almost nothing to do with who you really are. Trying to please everyone is like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. So let people disagree. Let some people walk away. Let some people misunderstand you. You are not meant to live inside other people's approval. You are meant to live inside your truth. And here is the last thing I want you to hear tonight. You don't need to become someone better to be worthy of being here. You are not a project that needs fixing before you can belong to life. You are already enough, right now. Not tomorrow, not when you are liked, not when everyone approves. Right now.